Rebirth Island is changing here soon. In a few short weeks, Rebirth Island as we know it will no longer be around, but it seems like it's transforming more so in some capacity, not entirely being wiped from existence in the map pool that we have. But what does that mean? And when will this happen? Today, I want to break down everything we know about the Rebirth Island overhaul here coming shortly and what to look out for. As we go along, drop your thoughts down below on what you'd like to see. A revamp to the map and a few smaller locale changes, an entire drop of a new map, whatever the case, feel free to leave your thoughts down below. But if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, drop a like on the video as well as drop a comment. It helps out the video greatly in the algorithm. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Warzone and anything Call of Duty related, especially as we round into the 2-year anniversary here for Warzone. If you're interested in any of that, I'd love to have you in the community. And finally, if you ever decide to pick up anything from the COD shop on either Vanguard, Warzone, Cold War, or Modern Warfare, and would like to help support the channel a little further, creator code Espresso is an entirely optional way to do so. Don't ever feel pressured to, only if you want to, but if you do, tweet me a picture. I'd love to shout out some of your generous support in upcoming videos. But said, let's jump into it. So firstly, where does this information come from that we'll be seeing changes to Rebirth Island? Well, actually two places in particular, both in official capacity. There's rumors elsewhere, but we'll talk about that in a second after we cover the legitimate stuff because the rumors are just conjecture at this moment without anything concrete. But the first mention of this came all the way back in the Season 2 preview blog here talking about the coming content for Warzone and Vanguard Season 2. The team at Call of Duty snuck in what is almost fine print at this point as there was so much to discuss, but in a subsection entitled Stay Tuned for Patch Notes Rebirth Island mid-season update, they said, as Caldera's secrets come to light, something lurks within Rebirth Island's shadows. Expect substantial changes to the prison island during the mid-season update. And that was it. Quite curious for sure, but not really a whole ton to go off of. However, in addition to this, we also saw a second mention as of recently, in which in the recently published Iron Trials Rebirth Guide, there were a lot of talks about tips, tricks, and strategy guides in this, but hidden in the midst of all that intel, it was written that given that this is the final mode for the current Rebirth Island, consider this an encore for both Beanox and Raven Software, inspired by Treyarch's original locale, who brought this map to life on December 16th of 2020 with Season 1 of Black Ops Cold War. Although it is not the end for Rebirth Island, you may want to drop back in before a familiar foe brings the largest updates to this map since its release. So you can see that while we're not given a whole ton in terms of details and specifics, there's enough to know that we have substantial changes coming to the map that we've probably come to know and love over the last year and a half or so. So as for rumors maybe trying to fill the gap here a little bit further, it has been mentioned in the past that people would love to see Hashima Island, a very similar island and build to Alcatraz from Blackout and also Rebirth Island here, that reincarnation of Alcatraz for Rebirth Island. Personally, I don't know if we'll be seeing this happen based off the wording of what we've seen officially. This kind of more so seems like a Verdansk 84 type of treatment where we have major changes to the map, but not everything is entirely moving away from it. But also we haven't had anything indicating this in the game files, if I'm not mistaken, which if that does turn out to be the case, good lord, they've gotten that under wraps pretty well. It would be one of the first few times and maybe just a handful of total times that something this big and this important wouldn't have leaked out if that turns out to be the case. But I don't quite know that I'm expecting that. But big changes, that means stuff for gameplay, but also the storyline. I'm very curious for what this means for the story here within Warzone that we followed over the last almost 2 years at this point. Over the course of Vanguard so far, technically, if you want to follow canon, the events unfolding in the Vanguard side of the storyline are a flashback. If you guys remember, we were introduced to this crossover first at the end point of Season 6 here with Black Ops Cold War, or I guess kind of midpoint. It was right before Vanguard launched, but not before Season 6 was over. We saw this cutscene pick up after the events of where Verdansk had those fissures and opening up of the underground where Adler, Hudson, Mason, and Woods all stumbled across this Nazi bunker to find none other than an older Captain Butcher who would have had to have been in his like mid-70s or 80s at this point, but he went on and started telling the tale of how he came to set up the Vanguard, the first special operation teams here that we learned about within the Vanguard campaign. But that's where the flashbacks to Caldera and the Pacific all started, and why the story that we're being told on the Vanguard side of things is flashback, but also why we have in canon the ability to play with our Cold War and Modern Warfare weapons on Caldera as well, which, yes, kind of red flag Modern Warfare weapons in the 80s. That setting doesn't really check out, but I mean, when meshing 3 time periods and universes, I guess that's not the worst outcome that we could have, if that's all we have to really worry about. But technically speaking, this opens the door further. In that same blog post we just referenced earlier, it stated, although it's not the end for Rebirth Island, you may want to drop back in before a familiar foe brings the largest updates to this map we've seen since its release. Keyword being familiar. So who could that be? The only foe that we had really during the Cold War season, and as this time frame when this story is being told, was Stitch. who really we ended up seeing get killed, though I guess through rule of cinema, games, if you don't actually see the person die, we saw in the cutscene a cut to black as the pistol is fired. Does that really mean that they're dead? The ending cutscene for Cold War's Year of Support left a lot of questions on the table, so it could fit nicely that with new content coming for Black Ops Cold War Year 2, maybe we have these two stories going at once, where the flashback is being told for Vanguard, but also Stitch and Perseus are continuing out things once again. WMD was delayed, but in theory, WMD could also be another manufacturing site for the Nova 6 of this storyline, not just the original campaign that we saw with the original Black Ops. So perhaps Stitch did get away, he somehow survived, or maybe somebody else took up the mantle. It could be Wraith or another Perseus baddie here that stepped in after the death of Stitch. I'm very curious to see where this goes though, and incredibly excited that we could see this story continue on for what it's worth. Though I would be lying if I said that I didn't want them to break the internet and the gaming world by tying this somehow into the upcoming Modern Warfare 2 and starting that storyline and marketing the game somehow. It kind of feels strange almost that if this Stitch and Perseus thing were to happen, we'd be going back to the story of an older game in March or April of the year where it's the most anticipated game of the franchise in nearly the last decade or so. So we'll have to see how that plays out, but imagine that. We see some story implications for like the introduction of Makarov and setting up Modern Warfare 2 here. Can you imagine how many people would lose their mind over that? I think that'd be mad cool, but also wouldn't quite fit the rumored drug war campaign that we have here supposedly coming within Modern Warfare 2. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself here, getting away from the topic. The final thing that I want to talk about is when is this update for Rebirth going to happen? When's this mid-season update? That's a really good question because it actually turns out that recently the Battle Pass actually got a few days added to it, indicating an extension on the season. So any previous dates can almost be thrown out, but if there's any context clues here for when we can see this happening, we know that Rebirth Island won't be having any new mode introductions here until after the overhaul. So far, we have listed up until the week of March 17th, then wrapping on the 24th, listed on the Trello board for our content coming here in the next couple of weeks. Now, it is potential we could see that happen sooner because we have seen recently that Season 2 launch was on a Tuesday in the afternoon as opposed to the recent updates as of the last year and a half that went out overnight from Wednesdays overnight into Thursdays for major updates. So it is still a toss-up. I'm not saying the 24th is that date, but what's also curious is that another context clue is we have a double XP event scheduled for the 24th and 25th for PlayStation, and then that weekend into the 28th for everybody. That usually happens after a major title update, a major seasonal update. So that would then line up with one more piece of information that I have myself that isn't quite public, but during that pre-Season 2 briefing that myself, other content creators, and press had with Pat Kelly, studio head at Infinity Ward, and other heads of Warzone, that same one that inadvertently confirmed Modern Warfare 2 or everything but the name, and Warzone 2, that same meeting, there was a list of fixes that were detailed coming over the course of Season 2, 2.5, and Season 3 to Warzone, and only one of those had a specific date attached to it, but it was for Season 2.5, the mid-season update, that was March 22nd. So as we just mentioned, that's during the last week here that we have listed for the playlist updates. And it's a week behind the original midpoint of the season, but with that extension we just mentioned in mind, that does line up with the midpoint actually being March 22nd. So we could see these updates, the mid-season update and the Rebirth Overhaul, all happening in just a couple of weeks' time here, if all things do hold up. So that said, that's where we're at here at this. Some big changes here for Rebirth Island coming, storyline implications, when you could expect it, and everything in between. So hopefully this was insightful here for you and let you know that maybe you should jump into Rebirth Island before something substantial changes. But anyways, we'll keep you up to date with everything we learn as per maybe some actual specific changes once details are given, anything leaks out, whatever the case, but wanted to fill you guys in here on the coming Rebirth Overhaul. So let me know your thoughts down below. Are you guys looking forward to it? Where do you think the story will go? Do you think it's something that ties back in with Cold War? Do you think it's something that maybe leads up to some of the marketing of Modern Warfare 2? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts down below. But if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, drop a like on the video. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Warzone, anything COD related, we got you covered here on the channel. So if you're interested, I'd love to have you in the community. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.